the time to start was yesterday. So just do it. Don't doubt yourself. Don't come up with a big idea. Don't wait. Get fucking started.
Welcome to the next episode of the Entrepreneurial Excellence Podcast. It is with great pleasure that I have David Walsh, the CEO and founder of Limelight, which is sort of a B2B influencer platform. And we'll talk really about what Limelight does a bit, but really the focus, as everyone knows, of this podcast is to understand why someone like David, who has founded, depending on what you look at on LinkedIn versus the actual underlying truth, 3 companies, or really 8 different companies, most of which have failed. But yet, here David is with a smile on his face, is still building, doing something new, and everything else. So, David, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Adam. Excited to be here. And it was a funny time to record when I post a post on the day of recording about 8 different companies that failed. I feel like I gave you a lot of material.
You gave me a ton because that is ideal for this target audience and discussion. So let's maybe kick off right at the beginning, right? So a question I like to ask everyone ready to start. You've worked with and read about, I'm sure, lots of the world's best entrepreneurs. How do you define excellence as an entrepreneur?
I think excellence comes from honing a craft, and I think getting very, very, very focused on 1 or 2 specific things that you want to be great at. And I think excellence doesn't just come naturally, or it's not just like a skill that you're born with, right? You actually learn it over time. So you have to spend a lot of time doing something, in my opinion, to become excellent at it. And I think everyone has a different bar for the level of excellence. Somebody that you speak to might have a high, a focus on themselves, and they might think that they're excellent at something, whereas somebody else might be really excellent at something, but not even consider themselves an expert or excellent. So it's subjective. And, the things that really matter are great determination, time at which you've been doing it for, you need to learn from doing, and then you become excellent at something through repetitiveness.
Do you think so? A lot of questions just from that. Do you think that the top entrepreneurs in the world view themselves as being experts, or are they the opposite, where they're like, actually, even though they probably are better than 99.9% of people, that they're like, no, I still have so much more to learn and further to go?
I think if you speak with any top 1% person, they're always going to have the mindset of they're not quite there yet. Right. There's always an additional learning, right? If they're in the mindset of I'm there, I've done it, then, they're probably not the top 1% person, because in my opinion, there is no such thing as perfection. You're always striving for better. Ask Elon Musk, is he an expert at rocket and engineering? He'll probably tell you he's pretty freaking good and probably the best in the world, but he has more to learn. So I think it's a humble mindset, but it's a necessary one, which is I always want to continuously learn.
And I'll add, on the note of continuous learning, maybe another word to use is continuous curiosity. I'm just always curious about how you can learn more. That's why I do this podcast, because I have this opportunity to talk with great founders like yourself and learn from you. So how do I become better in my role? So also related to that, you sort of said you have to be excellent at what you do. Do you define that as being excellent at the business you are in as an entrepreneur, or being excellent just as an entrepreneur or leader or business person? They're sort of different, and you can maybe be good at both, but maybe not. Maybe you're the world's expert at AI, but you're actually not very good at building a company. There's sort of differences there.
Yeah, well, let me just react to the first comment, which was about curiosity. So I actually try interview people, and the thing that I'm always looking for is a sense of curiosity. Are they a curious person? Are they interested in new things? It's something that I think all top performers have to have, which is curiosity. And so I love that you brought that up. I don't think of myself as an expert at anything. I think I'm a generalist at everything. I think I'm good to really good at almost majority of things, other than coding, other than, maybe other than accounting, which probably isn't a good thing to have.
Although I think luckily for you, it looks like technology is catching up where you might not need to be good at either one of those things, because tech is essentially going to solve that problem. And actually, this is a tangent as well with AI a little bit, but there's a fair argument to be had that moving into a world where AI can do so many of these things for you, the people who will be the most successful are the ones who are most curious and good at framing their questions.
Personally, I don't think you need to be an expert at anything as a founder of an early stage company. I think what you need to be good at is understanding lots of different things, being able to acclimatize quickly, being able to understand 60 to 80% of a certain subject, and then allow the experts that you've hired to take care of that certain component or problem or department. So, I like to context switch quickly. That's why I got bored in my first job, which was, outbound sales at scale, because, you're just constantly reiterating the same and regurgitating the same message. So I like context switching. And I think that's an important part of early stage startups. But, as an entrepreneur, you can start different businesses, and people can be strengths, like they can be experts or very strong at certain things. And then, you can have a different CEO has the complete opposite skill set. So it is quite broad. The opportunity lies in the ability to hire people and build a team and fill your gaps and know what you're not good at. And over time, do that quickly and empower the team around you and trust them to execute.
So it's funny, as you're talking through that, I almost wanted to push back, but then I sort of caught myself. The reason being, a lot of the people that we've interviewed have been multi-time founders like you. Pretty much exclusively the audience. Many of them started businesses in a lot of different areas. So what I was going to push back on is say, well, hey, people need to have an expertise in something that they've been doing over and over again. So they're almost like the world's expert at, I just use like AI as an example, right? They are the world's expert at AI things. They've been in the space since before it was cool, all that stuff. Therefore, they have a higher chance of success. But realistically, when I think through our guests and what you're saying, is it's a little bit the opposite, where it's actually not that they are a pinnacle at knowledge on that specific topic or domain expertise. It's actually more being good at how do I delegate, how do I hire well, and how do I maybe track that success over time and push the team in an appropriate manner? Like, what are the steps? So when you think through you being a generalist and all the companies you've built, how do you metric out the things you need to put in place to achieve success?
So it's a big question, right? Let's start with like what I think fundamentally needs to happen for an early stage founder to take an idea into form a company. You have to be extremely passionate about the topic and the problem you're trying to solve. And then you can go above and beyond. And sometimes you fall into the business, sometimes by accident, right? Like I currently didn't know anything about B2B influencer marketing, 18 months ago. I just started posting content every day on LinkedIn, realized there was an opportunity, and then went deep into that and decided, you know what, I'm all in. And so then I go really deep into a topic and become a subject matter expert in it. We use the expert word there interchangeably, but you know what I mean? So I think it's just really important to have like a really driven, passionate passionate to solve a problem and get into a space. So I think like as a generalist, I can change topic and change industry and probably create an idea and build a business from it. But is it going to succeed long term will be very much dependent on my level of interest long term and how important I think the topic is. So, that's how I think about it. Like, I think you have to be very passionate about the problem you're solving, or else it's not going to last long term. And then as you think about hiring teams, I think first company or my last company that I started, which was a tech startup company, I didn't hire a CTO. That was the worst decision ever. I ended up not hiring a CTO for the first 3 years of the business, and we paid a huge price for that. So this time around, I spent 6 months before even starting the company, finding the right person to lead the technical part of the business, because I'm not technical, I can't code. And it feels amazing because now I have somebody in place I with 100% trust to be able to build any aspect of any product as a top 1% engineer. So, hopefully that answers your question around how I think about solving problems and, building teams.
It does a little bit. I mean, I want to double click on both of those points, but first let's start with the last one, which is around like CTO. Do you think, is a CTO what every entrepreneur should hire, or is it more like find the key skill set you need to have to be successful that you don't personally possess, and then find the best person for that?
So I have a contrarian take on this, or maybe it's like just not everyone's going to agree with this. I fundamentally believe that you have to have a technical co-founder to start a software company and be successful. The odds of being successful if you do not have a technical co-founder starting a startup in tech are dramatically reduced. So, for example, Y Combinator won't invest in any startup that doesn't have a technical co-founder. There's a reason for that. So,
So it's not a contrarian bet. That sounds like the consensus bet.
for them at least. If you went and spoke to lots of people, I'd say the majority of folks would have a different opinion because there's so many companies that get started without technical co-founders. And some of them do well. I'm just saying, like, on the odds, like on the margin, more often than not, it's good to have a technical co-founder at the very early stages, if not day one.
Yeah, no, I agree. But then going back, so outside of the tech space, I assume you would say, like, identify the key thing you need. So obviously, you're building a tech company, you should have a CTO to help you build the tech. If you're a restaurant or just something like think about a sort of more standard non-VC backed tech space company, do you still try to identify, like, do you think having a partner who can kind of equal out your own strengths or weaknesses is still really important to the most successful companies? Like, what does that look like for non-tech companies? Like, should you hire someone, or it's just like, hey, like, maybe you can do it all?
Right. I would look at it by, are you hiring a business partner? Are you hiring a co-founder? And if you are you hiring one or two? Or are you hiring an early stage team who have the skills and competency, but isn't going to be a co-founder from day one? Meaning they're not going to get a huge slug of equity. They're going to be cash compensated. And you're going to hire a really good person in that role, but you don't see them as a business partner. I've always believed that to start businesses, it's better to have at least one co-founder, because it's such a lonely journey and it's such a long journey with so many ups and downs. If they're not a co-founder, they're just not going to the same level of, effort over time, sustained effort over time that you are. So there's definitely companies out there, that get started with one person as an entrepreneur building a business. And I think good for them. Awesome. I think that's incredible. My preference is to have a business partner and a co-founder where possible, because again, I think the odds of success are better. And that's not just including technology, although that's my experience. I'd say any business is good to have a business partner. And to go back to your question, like, it's important to know your gaps. What are you not good at? And like, sometimes you have to realize, like, what do you not want to spend your time doing, or what will take you twice as long as the other person to be able to do this? And then just allocate your time accordingly, right? Like, it might take me 3 hours to build a financial model, whereas it might take my, business partner 30 minutes. What would be a better use of time? Me trying to do it or delegating it to him? So that's an important part, right? Know your gaps, know your strengths.
And I mean, so I will add, by the way, I'm a 4-time founder in Chore, my current company. I am the sole founder. And it is different for me doing it this time around. I do have sort of the experience of doing it 3 times previously. And the pros and cons, just for the audience that I found at least, are that having a co-founder is all the key things David just said is really important. It's valuable. The upside is great. The danger, of course, as well, is that if you and the co-founder diverge in what you're trying to do at some point, which happens in lots and lots and lots of relationships in the work world and the personal world, at some point things diverge. And you want to go in different directions. It can also lead to a lot of dangerous scenarios that can really destroy a company. And in fact, if you ask a lot of VCs, probably the number one risk factor they have for company failure is a co-founder breakup. So it's a risk reward strategy, one that I would lean towards having a co-founder, at least if you've not done it before, but it's risky.
I agree 100%. It is certainly risky. There's ways to de-risk it, right? There's ways to make sure that you don't mess up the cap table long term, by committing too early to somebody. Like, it's a journey, right? Sometimes these things feel like a shotgun marriage, right? You meet somebody, you want to start a business, and then you just, instead of dating, you just get married. It's crazy, right? That's crazy. So, you got to find smart ways to be able to test if you want to work together and if it's going to make sense long term. Just for context, and this is for the audience too, when I started this current business, I hired a technical co-founder who actually was working for another company and promised me he'd be able to join my company at the 3-month mark. Within those 3 months, he hired 3 engineers. And then by the end of those 3 months, he told me actually he can't come on full time. So I went out, found another co-founder, found another technical leader, happened to stumble upon one of the best engineers I've ever met, my co-founder and CTO, Young Jay. And he told me, Dave, I'll join, but I don't want your engineering team because I'll be faster without an engineering team. And so I fired my whole team, including my other co-founder, and restarted. And that was month 4 of the business. So you have to be willing to make tough decisions and evolve quickly at the early stages. yeah, it's a battle.
So going back to one of the things you pointed about, like kind of being obsessive about the topic, how do you know, like people a lot of times probably think they are obsessive. Do you have a definition for what being really obsessive, at least as a founder, entails? Like, how do you know you are more obsessed and better than the large majority of people, right? If you're somebody thinking of starting a company, how do you know you are more obsessed? Or you've already started a company, but you're losing that focus and obsession. So 2 questions. 1, how do you know you're obsessed? How do you know you're better than the rest? And then 2, if you start to lose that obsession, are there ways to get it back? Since founding a company is a long journey. So staying on top of things can be tough.
Well, let me start with the last first, which is the evolution of your idea will happen naturally from your own curiosity and your own interests, right? Like I started with the referral software with this business and it evolved and pivoted into a B2B influencer marketplace. So often what you start out with, as long as you're going in directionally the right direction, which for me was B2B SaaS focused on revenue tech, either sales or marketing. Those were the 2. And I just said, if I build in that, I'll be always interested. I didn't know the exact opportunity until I went to market with it. And then it kind of figured itself out and I just followed the right signals. So just know that whatever you start with, don't get hung up on, I have to have the perfect idea. Often the idea doesn't matter. The execution is the only thing that matters. So also I'm telling founders and aspiring entrepreneurs, aspiring founders, like it's just important to get going and then figure it out along the way because it will evolve. So I think that's really important. I can't remember the other part of the question.
Just around like, how do you know you're actually like a true obsessive, right? I think a lot of people believe they are great at something. And certainly when you interview lots of people like you and I both have, everyone says, oh, I'm the best at this. I've thought about this in depth. I'm really good. How do you tease out, are they really as good as they claim? Like to your point about your CTO, right? How did you figure out, you're not an engineer, so how did you figure out he is that good?
So really difficult to do, like extremely difficult to do. In fact, at some point, like everything, you just have to take enough information and enough insights and then take a bet and make the risk, right? For my specific scenario with Young Jay, he had a letter from the Uber CTO where he worked with them for 5 years. And his letter was to say that he was a top 1% engineer. He had pictures with the CTO going to dinner with him every year because he was a top performer. So that signaled to me that he knew what he was doing, right? But that's not always the case, especially with technical people, non-technical people assessing technical people. I actually get asked that quite a bit from founders. Where do you find technical talent? And it's just so difficult, right? Because you don't know, what really great looks like versus what good looks like. So you asked a question about like, what does obsessive mean? I wake up in the morning at 5 a.m. thinking about solving a problem and about something that's happened the day, weeks, and months before. And it could be something that is in the back of my mind, a problem that I wanted to solve. And then I go to sleep at 11 p.m. thinking about problems and trying to solve problems and being obsessed with it. Right. So the point is that I believe that every minute and every hour of the day, I spend thinking about business problems and solving business problems, some more fun to solve than others. And so when you think about obsessive, people often think I'm obsessed with something like not between the hours of 9 and 5. Like that's not obsessive. I'm obsessed with something the moment my eyes are awake. Sometimes I'm asleep and I'm so obsessed with it, I'm dreaming about it. So like there's definitely a spectrum of obsessiveness, and you've got to be able to figure out like what that looks like. I will tell you, as human beings, we evolve, we learn, we grow. Right? We might be interested in something and then not interested in it, a few months or a few years later. That's okay. That's normal. It's natural. So my definition of obsessive is like, are you waking up thinking about it in the middle of the night and trying to solve the problem? And often as a founder, I heard, I think it was Elon talk about this a few years ago, that like as a founder, your job, people always think that it's the best job ever, CEO and founder. Often they think you're going to be solving the problems and coming up with a strategy and, hiring the team and going on private jets. Often co-founders and founders of companies and CEOs of companies, they have the worst problems. Every worst problem comes to you, and you have to solve it. So every day you go into work, you have to solve the worst problem, and somebody on your team will come to you with the worst problem. You have to decide, okay, this one's the worst problem today. Let me go solve that. So you're constantly filtering out all of the worst problems at a company. And a lot of people that haven't done the job don't understand that. And so that's the hard part, right? It's that grit and determination to go to work every day and solve the toughest problems.
And still be excited by it. I mean, like, so in a weird way, this might sound odd, but probably not given this conversation. I mean, I get a little, when I have DMs from like my executive team, I get a little bit worried. I'm like, oh boy, what's this going to be about? At the same time, like, that's also why I enjoy my job, is because like there's something there that needs to be solved, because they only pay me when they're kind of big issues. And so I get a little bit of anxiety, and I'm like, yep, but this is why I signed up for this job. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing. This is what excites me and why I'm getting into it. So it's kind of a combo of those things. I think it's a really, really good point. So, and then also, how do you manage being obsessed with having a life, or can you manage those two? Because there does need to, maybe there does, or does there need to be a work-life balance or unification? There's lots of terms for it nowadays. Like, how is that possible for the best entrepreneurs?
Work-life balance for founders doesn't exist, in my opinion, especially in the first 3 to 4 years, right? Like, you have to be all in all of the time. And the way I've balanced that myself, and everyone is different, everyone comes at this with a different lens, is I run in very aggressive sprints, which I'm very aware of. I'll be like, okay, this next 2 weeks, I am locked in. I'm doing 17-hour days and I don't care. And I'm just going to go for it. And then I'll pull back, be like, okay, now I'm going to take a break. I'm not doing any work. I'll delete apps on my phone. I'll put my phone in a cupboard that I lock the door, and I say, don't touch any electronics. So like, I go to lengths to be able to work in very aggressive sprints and then separate myself to be able to think clearly. And often the best kind of experience is being able to disconnect. I went to a wedding in South Africa last month and spent 3.5 weeks there. And through that time, I took 2 days off for the wedding, the day before and the day of the wedding. And I was able to just completely disconnect, threw my phone away, threw my laptop away. And like, that sounds like a small thing to do, but for me, like, that's actually a really big thing to do. So I think everyone approaches it differently. There's stress, there's, work is all encompassing. You have to have your ways in which you balance it. And look, I have a 3-year-old son. When he arrived, when he was 6 months of age, I raised our Series A for my last company. We went out and raised $25 million in the Series A. And that was the worst time of my entire professional career, because I had no sleep and I had 10 investment meetings a day for 2.5 months. And then I closed a transaction and I went to bed for a week, like literally went to bed for a week. So you run in sprints and you got to be prepared for that. And work-life balance is tough.
I'm guessing your spouse wasn't super excited by that, but hopefully they knew what they were getting into.
Yeah, it's an ongoing saga. Good for her for staying with me.
Yes, for sure. I have 2 young kids myself, so I agree with you. It's really hard to have that work-life balance. I feel like what I try to tell people, and for listeners of this, you probably heard me say this a bunch of times, but I think at best you can maybe do 2 things really well. I'm not even sure if that's accurate, but like, that basically means my life is essentially work all the time, and then kids. And kids are in very specific time buckets. When they're not, they're at school right now, so I'm not doing kid stuff. They come home, I'll spend time with them, be very focused on them, and then go back to work until I'm too tired and need to go to bed. And rinse and repeat, basically 6.5 days a week. That's what it takes. Because I owe it to my kids, but I owe it to my company, who also employs a lot of people and pays lots of people's salaries and keeps them going and their families going. They both deserve a huge amount of my focus. And so that's what I really try to focus on. But
so let me make one comment on that, because I actually agree with you, and I think I'm going to say it in a different way, but probably the same thing. There's like a triangle, right, in your life, where everyone is sort of going towards 1 or 2 triangles at any one time. One of them is family, one of them is social, one of them is money, right? And I'm always going towards money and family, and then I have no social life. Like, I don't do anything outside work. I don't have the time. Right. And then when I'm with my kids, with my kid, I just try be as present as possible. And I will tell you, that is one of the hardest things for me to do. It's just like, stay present, stop getting distracted, stop looking on LinkedIn, when you're with your kids. So constantly trying to work and be better at that, for sure.
I think there are certainly entrepreneurs out there who are good examples of being able to focus deeply on something and still have time for a few other things, and hopefully be high quality individuals. Despite their maniacal focus on whatever their key thing is at the time. So Let's walk through. What were we going to say?
I mean, I just feel like this, I could keep going. This is slightly different, but a different tangent. I read something recently, I think it was yesterday, where it said along the lines of, you need to be able to, as a high performer, as a top 1% person, you need to be able to forgive yourself and forgive the guilt around not doing anything. Meaning, if I'm not doing anything, or if I'm watching Netflix, or if I'm, have free time, I feel so guilty. I'm like, why am I doing something? Like, what's next? What do I need to do next? And what I've realized is that's actually a human wiring in my brain that sometimes I just need to be able to turn off. So like, I have this amount of guilt around not doing anything. And I think I'm now more aware of that and more mature. And I think it's really important to be able to give yourself that freedom and time, and be okay with doing nothing for a while.
Well, not only doing nothing, so maybe just to add to that, I would say it's not doing nothing as much as it's being okay that you can't do it all. If that sort of makes sense, right? It's sort of the flip side of that. But essentially saying, I know there are things I'm not going to get to. Like, I've told my team that if they ping me for things and they don't get a response from me within like 24 hours, it's probably not that critical. If it's truly critical, and then if it's truly critical to them, they can DM me or they can reach out in other ways if it's truly critical. But otherwise, like, that's just, I'm constantly prioritizing what is most critical and most important. And hopefully they trust me enough to know that I'm making good prioritizations. I do think that's part of being a good entrepreneur as well, is where am I going to focus the most of my time, which is I'm going to do the things that only I can do. So this podcast is an example. I can't delegate this to someone else. I need to do this, and I happen to enjoy doing it, added bonus, but like, only I can do this. That means though, I'm not right now looking at my emails and my Slack messages and all these other things that are also happening. Those are going to have to wait, or some of them just aren't going to get done. Or hopefully, if you build a good team, your team will realize that they can go run without you being right next to them, and you trust them to do it. That's why arguably you hired them. Let's go a little bit to your history. So on LinkedIn, you say you founded 3 companies, but then reality is that you founded 8. So one is the LinkedIn pretty sexy thing. Although I think if you said you founded 8 companies, that's actually sexier than founding 3. Maybe not, because a bunch of them have failed. But walk us through, right? Your first company was at age 16, and maybe even walk us back before that. So you're Irish. You're from Ireland originally. When you were in high school, 16, are you living in Ireland? Why did you start? What made you decide to start a company making pick IDs?
Well, out of necessity, like every other great company, I needed to get into the local nightclub with all of my friends. And I said, well, how am I going to get into this nightclub where the girls are without, having an ID that tells people that I'm 18 years of age? And just so everyone's aware, in the US, you have to be 21 to drink. In Ireland, you start drinking when you're 14, 15. So by the time you're 16, you're looking for somewhere to go. But yeah, to answer your question, like, I'm Irish, born and raised, lived most of my life there. Went to college, did a bachelor's in commerce.
Up in Dublin, or?
Yeah, I grew up in Dublin. Yeah. Love it there. Like, love the people. Didn't like the weather. The weather's terrible. It rains 9 times out of 10. But I had a great time there and a great experience. I did a bachelor's in commerce, then a master's in marketing. I worked in 2 early stage startups. But as you mentioned, my first entrepreneurial venture, in my opinion, the first time I made real money was making fake IDs for my friends, where I think I made like €800 and I thought it was like $80,000. I had €800 at the age of 16. You could do anything. So yeah,
you should have been splitting some of that. I know your parents shut it down, but you should have been splitting it with your parents. Be like, you're paying for my rent, you're covering my food, so like, here's some of my profits.
Well, you know what? Like, the truth is my dad was the right mix of shocked and appalled versus very impressed. He took a look that I had bought one of these like grinder things that like make sure that the edges of the paper get cut perfectly, and the reason he caught me is I had cut so many pieces of paper that there was just like shreds of paper all over my floor. He's like, what is this? And then he opened up my drawer and there it was, 10 IDs. But you know what, like, great experience. And he just said, like, you have to stop that immediately, but I'm kind of impressed. And I was like, okay, let's go channel that energy into something actually, not illegal. So, you don't know this about me, but like, I have a very supportive dad and a very supportive mom. dad works very hard. And mom took care of the family. And I always wanted to be an entrepreneur from like a very, very young age. You know, I was asked when I was 19 by my dad in a pub, like, what do you want to be when you're older? And I said, by the age of 25, I want to own a tech company. And for somebody to say that at 19 in America would be pretty crazy. In Ireland, you're deluded. Like,
So, okay, so why were you that person saying that? Like, were you reading all the tech blogs? Like, what were you reading or thinking about at 19 that there was even a career path that you even someone would even consider?
so I just love technology. Like, I was hacking technology and building websites and like doing stuff on computers from like a very, very, very young age. And I've just always loved technology, always loved products, and wanted to build a tech company. Like, I wanted to be a tech founder, and I knew it, and I knew that I could do it if I had set my mind to it. Problem is, no one believed me, and no one thought I would actually do it.
What did your dad say when you told him that?
Other than my dad.
What did he say? He was like, good for you, and like, go make it happen? Or he was like,
he looked me dead in the eyes. He goes, I have zero doubt that you're going to make that happen. And that meant a lot at that time, right? Whereas everyone else in the pub that I was saying this to was just laughing. Like, yeah, fucking right. Like, you're never going to do that. Like, just so you know, in America, and you asked me like before we started recording, like, why move to America? In Ireland and outside of the US, just more generally, the idea of entrepreneurship and the idea of creating something is so far, the mindset is very different. In America, people invest in entrepreneurs. They invest in new ventures. They invest in ideas. In Ireland, the UK, and I would argue like outside of the US, it's much harder to get people to agree to your vision or see your same vision without pointing out the problems. The analogy that I always use is, if I tell an investor that's not an American that I have this great idea, here it is, like, here's what I'm going to do, they'll tell me, and they're not American, right? They'll tell me all of the challenges, all of the risks. They'll point out all of the things that could go wrong. And then if I tell the exact same story to somebody that's American, that is an investor, they'll tell me all of the opportunity. And they'll say, oh, that's a great idea. Like, here's how you should think about it differently. And I think there's part of that's the culture. It's part of the way in which Americans are brought up. Part of it is also the opportunity. For decades, for centuries, companies that get started in the US get access to a much bigger market. So there's more capital gets allocated because the opportunity for those businesses to grow is exponential. Whereas now, and then for years, that wasn't the case in other countries, right? If you're building a company outside of the US, your whole job is to try get into the US because the market's bigger, right? And it was very difficult before globalization. It's much easier now. So anyway, going on a tangent there, but like, I genuinely believe that in Europe and in Ireland, I wasn't going to get the start that I needed. And I wasn't going to surround myself with the people with the same mindset as me of like this brazen, I would call it like ambition. So I wanted to move to the US, and that's what I did.
So when did you go do that? So you're 19, you tell your dad this. At age 20, you launched a job board. Was that when you first you moved to the US when you were basically in college?
Yeah. So I started a job board as I was finishing my third year in college.
In Ireland?
And I did a bachelor's in commerce. So it ended up being 3 years instead of 4. I don't know why, but yeah, I decided to get a student visa. Well, another thing about Ireland is college is affordable. It's not the same. That's another thing about why I wanted to finish education in Ireland, because it's actually affordable. So yeah, I just came to the US for 3 months during a transitional period where I think it was the summer between second and third year. Went to New York City, absolutely loved it. Went from white, homogenous Ireland, like seeing the same people and the same things, to like input myself into New York City and realizing the world is so much bigger than I really thought it was, and became obsessed with that almost immediately. And so did 3 months as a summer working in the Hamptons, working in restaurants. Made a load of money working in restaurants in the Hamptons, and decided to go back to Ireland with all this money and finish my final year of college, and then get another student visa and move back to the US. Because I just decided, I said, look, Mom, Dad, I'm moving to the US after I finish college. I'm only going to go for 1 or 2 years. And now I've been here for 10 years.
Sort of tangent quickly on that front. I mean, how do they feel? I mean, I'm sure they're proud of you. Do they try to get you to move back at all? Or just like, I need to be, in your case, in LA now, and you just need to be here?
So I would say there's always a conversation about when are we moving home? It goes on every year. There's another conversation about when are you moving home? I actually moved from New York to LA 5 years ago because my wife got a job at Netflix. And we were like, you have to take that opportunity to work for Netflix. And I told my parents, we'll move for 1 year. They were like, you were meant to be moving back to Ireland and now you're moving another 5 hours away on a plane. And I said, don't worry, we'll be back in a year. And then, we've been here for 5 years now.
Is your wife Irish or American or?
She's Irish.
Yeah. So it's hard for both of your families then.
Right, exactly. And it's harder now that you have a kid, right? Because your kids and your grandparents want to be around the grandchild. The good news is we moved into a bigger house down in Irvine and moved out of apartments. And now we have opportunity to have my family to visit and stay with us whenever they want. My father-in-law is with us right now for the last 10 days because my kids are out of school. My kid's out of school. So that's been awesome.
So did you find then, so you moved to the US, you're like, this is a bigger world. I can make good money here, but bigger world. And then what happened? Keep walking through like how you started. Well, I think we're only at company number 2, basically, of 8. So what were the next big steps? How many failed? And what were the key lessons? If any, maybe you've had at this point, maybe not, if still too early. What sort of lessons have you had?
I did 2 early stage startups back in Ireland. I joined one as an unpaid intern and was working in sales. And we used to take a picture of yourselves and clock into work and then take a picture of yourselves and clock out of work. So I was selling this time and attendance software way ahead of its time. Got to meet the CEO, still friends with him. He ended up selling the company to Bullhorn. And I just had that amazing experience with him. So I left that company, licensed a version of his product and went to launch my own job board. And I said, I have to go back to college because I'm doing a master's degree in marketing. But at the same time, I want to launch a job board. So I went back to college, did a master's degree and then launched a job board while in college. And then I was part of another startup company in Ireland, both in HR tech. And then I always wanted to go to the US, as I mentioned. So, through that experience, I decided I was emigrating. The truth is that you won't see it on my LinkedIn, but when I moved to the US, I worked in restaurants and bars for 18 months to 2 years because I wasn't able to get a job on a student visa working in a company, right? So it took me a while to figure out, and I learned a lot in the hospitality industry, and I can still make great cocktails, which is a huge benefit.
I bet maybe you got to open the great Irish pub or something in LA. That pub culture doesn't quite exist in the US as it does in Ireland.
No, it definitely doesn't. Yeah, so I worked my way up, worked in hospitality, always wanted to get into a big company, just needed a break. So I ended up working in a recruitment firm for 6 months and then got a job at Indeed, which is the large job site, changed my resume on Indeed and they reached out. And the rest is history. I can tell you a bit more about that journey and experience. Was one of the top performing sales leaders in Indeed for 12 months, came up with an idea, which was to help our customers hire non-US citizens. So I launched an internal incubator, got funded by the CEO and the chief technology officer of Indeed to launch a internal business. And ultimately they did a background check because I got to the final round after giving me $250K and determined that I didn't know that I was on a student visa and determined that I was not allowed work on a student visa in a sales capacity. So after giving me $250K to launch an internal business, they actually fired me on the same day back in 2000.
Did you get to keep the $250 or was that just sort of to run the business? And
didn't get anything, got told to leave and hand back my laptop. And honestly, crazy experience, but probably the biggest motivator I've ever had. From there, I ended up starting my own business, started a watch company, built a watch company, sold a watch company, started a HR software company that actually did exactly what I was trying to do at Indeed and built that business up. And then, funny enough, full circle moment, Indeed came back to me when we were raising our Series A and wanted to invest in the company that they let me go of for 3 years.
I hope you said it's going to cost you a lot more than $250K to get involved.
I said there's a zero on the end for you.
Yes.
It was too late. The investment round had already closed and the check size didn't work.
Yeah, that makes sense. So then you doing all these companies. And so that was the HR company at age 28, right? But for all of these, basically, I'm looking through this list, like all of them, you basically say you failed for all of them. Except even the HR company did have you raised a lot of money and it had an exit. So maybe let's define success and the counter to that failure, since you've considered yourself a failure throughout, yet here you are today, married with a kid, owning a house. You've clearly done something right. How do you define success? And what's failure look like?
Yeah, well, nothing beats a best. Nothing's better than a great LinkedIn post where you're able to tell stories about failure, and it gets a lot of people talking. The truth is I have a very high bar for excellence, and when I get into something, my ambition will tell me that I need this to be huge. Like, we're not going for small, fish. I want to go all in, and I want to go as hard as I possibly can. And unfortunately, with that comes an incredible amount of risk. Like 9 times out of 10, it's not going to work. Right. So with the watch company, I thought it was a success. If I was to write a different post, I'd probably say I built a 6-figure, watch company and sold it within 18 months of launching it.
That sounds like a success.
I personally wanted that to be sold for 7 figures.
Why didn't you keep going then? Like, why did you say yes to selling?
Timing. I had decided that I was going to start another software company, and I couldn't do both. And I was at my co-founder of that watch company had left the United States, so I was left with the business. And so, long story short, just decided it was the right time to sell it. And it was a great decision, great experience. Manufacturing a watch. Learnings from that is don't custom build a watch because it costs a fortune. You're much better just putting a logo on somebody else's model and mold.
And like a logo and making it look nice and doing the marketing, basically.
Well, nobody knows this, but like when you're building consumer products, a lot of the times the manufacturers have thousands of variations of models and casks, and like you just think, oh, you're slapping a logo on somebody else's product. Like there's thousands to choose from. I stupidly decided no, none of those thousands were a good option. Let me go, design my own mold, and then it ended up costing 5 times more than it should have. So those are learnings you can only get from doing it, though.
Yes, that is. I've heard that story, at least with hardware related stuff. It can be really challenging and really expensive to do that. Okay, so those are failures because you have such a high bar for what success looks like. Okay, and then why pivot from all these ones, right? Watch company, HR company, into now Limelight. Like, what's the thread that connects all those? I mean, going back to our conversation, you sort of said, look, it's just that you get obsessed about something. How did you get obsessed? I mean, going from watch building or immigrant hiring platform to manufacturing watches to HR platform to B2B influencers doesn't seem like there's a clear thread. You will probably tell me otherwise, but what does that look like?
Well, I don't know if there is a clear thread. I think you've got to do whatever makes most sense for yourself in that moment in time. Like the reason I launched a watch company is because I knew I could do it to get it off the ground for $20,000. I knew I had to build a watch company. I could find a manufacturer. I could build a website. I didn't have $1 million to go all in, but I knew that there was like a low entry point, e-commerce watch company. Let's go do that. Let's go see how far we can get that. So I did that. And then that propelled me to get the charisma and the experience to go and launch a software venture. Now, when I went to launch a software venture, I said, okay, well, what my experience? My experience was B2B software in HR and talent acquisition. So I said, okay, don't make it too confusing. Like use what you currently have and your experience and network to be able to like limit the risk of this not working and getting it off the ground and convincing investors to give you money. So I stayed within my own realm. I didn't want to change it up too much. But ultimately, I wanted to get into revenue tech. Like I'm a sales and marketing person. Brand is my thing. I love branding. I love sales. So I always wanted to sell revenue tech. The problem is, Adam, everyone wants to sell revenue tech.
Just to define it, revenue tech is tech that enables more revenue, essentially.
Yeah, anything that helps companies grow, like sales, marketing, customer success, I would define as revenue technology, focused on helping companies grow their revenue. And everyone wants to do that because if you're successful, your company helps another company grow, they're going to love you, and then they're going to.
You can sell that all day long. If you're helping print money, you can sell that all day long.
Yeah. So I got very focused. Like I spent 6 months just like thinking of ideas, from some of the worst ideas you can possibly imagine, all the way to like filtering out, okay, this is what's next. That period in time of like deciding what you're going to do next is scary because I'm an entrepreneur. I didn't want to go work for somebody else. I have a family and I have a kid. Like I need a salary. So what am I going to do? Like, okay, I need to go raise capital and start another company and build a business, or I need to become an investor and join a VC fund. But I just knew I had another operator role in me, at least one. So very quickly just focused on B2B software for revenue tech, went deep into that, super saturated, started with referral software with the thesis that companies should grow through their own users. And then through that process, fell into influencer marketing because I started posting content on LinkedIn every day and just became hyper aware of this industry of people who had created content for a long time and have built trusted audiences in B2B and hadn't really monetized yet through brand partnerships. And so I just made this big bet 18 months ago that the future of marketing is personality led. People are going to follow people. They don't want to follow brand. Yet influencer marketing is brand new to B2B. It's existed in B2C. It's super messy and time consuming. So let's just streamline all of the processes from sourcing to activation to measurement, build a system of record, make it more transparent, and build a technology marketplace that people actually want to use that get a lot of value. And it was extremely painful. And here we are. I'm having the time of my life. And enjoying it tremendously.
Well, you may not remember, but actually we were a really early user of the platform, trying to make it work, wasn't working, had trouble with it. I assume it's come really far. And obviously after this call, I need to see if we can re-engage and make that happen because we were trying to build this ourselves. I mean, the funny thing is how all these ideas sort of come together. I was like, to my team, we should be doing this. There's all these influencers on social media doing all these like consumer influencing. Why the heck doesn't this exist? And it's so funny how these ideas come up as an entrepreneur because I was like, had I not been running Chore, I would have said, we should just build this ourselves. Like, this would be my new idea. I'm going to go do this because this is a clear need I have. It seems like it makes complete sense that if it works well on the consumer side, it should work well on the business side. People do want trusted sales. In fact, it's becoming more and more prominent on this side because as AI sort of creates all this slop basically everywhere, you need more trusted voices in the world that you can follow and pay attention to. So anyways, long story short, totally agree with the thesis, totally agree with where you're going. I'm excited that we're having this conversation so we have an opportunity to re-engage post-call and see if we can use you because it makes a huge amount of sense. How do you, now that you're building Limelight, how do you think through a lot of the key things? Like what sort of culture have you created? You've done this at a bunch of different companies. Is there sort of a David Walsh culture, Norm? You hear these cultures, sort of Jeff Bezos, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, they each sort of have their own culture that they're well known for. Is there a type of culture that works best as an entrepreneur, and is there one that you try to embody or imbue in your companies that creates the greatest outcomes?
Yeah, such a great question, Adam. So I would argue that the likelihood of success is going to be dramatically improved by hiring exceptional talent, and any wrong hire in the first 10 hires of a company will slow it down and make it, more likely that you're going to fail. So getting your first 10 hires right is critical. You asked me about company culture. I would say if you ask the team that I've worked with, I have a very high bar for how I operate and my responsiveness, to certain problems or messaging or communication. But I have this frightening sense of speed and urgency where everything is urgent. And I cannot understand if you cannot action on something immediately, if you believe it to be urgent and you just don't do it. That's just not acceptable. So I have this like scary speed at which I operate at. And then I have this like other side to me, which I want to allow people the opportunity to be working autonomously and have trust in their ability to execute. So I try hire people that don't need a lot of guidance, that can work autonomously, but work extremely quickly. And I think that's a hard balance to find, right? Like I want to work with the best of the best. I have very little tolerance for people who, don't meet the expectations. And I like to work fast. I like to work hard. I like to have fun. We celebrate every win. It's the end of the quarter today. This is recorded on March 31st, right? I'm in my Slack channel, blowing up the Slack channel, talking about new deals getting across the line, even the smallest deals that people wouldn't care about. So
I'm waiting for your email immediately post this call. What deal do we get for the end of the quarter signing up?
Yeah, exactly. Posting content on LinkedIn every day. You should follow me for sure because I'm very noisy on LinkedIn. But yeah, look, truth is is like culture's hard to build. I think at the early stages, it evolves your culture, right? I'm in the mode right now where everyone is all in all the time. We need to solve all the problems and move as quickly as we can. And over time, I'll start to build a company and build the team and build the organizational layers into the company where people will take over certain departments and ownership over certain teams. And then you have to build more complexity into the operating model.
How do you manage that though? Like everyone says, I only want to work with the best, and I want people who can move fast, because every entrepreneur wants to move fast. As always, I try to tell my team the same thing. We should have this sense of urgency, but people just don't always move that fast, or the speed at which I think they can move is different than the reality, because entrepreneurs have they have a probably incorrect perspective on the speed at which others can move, because you're willing to work harder and faster, and you know more than the average employee is going to know. So how do you really make sure you can build that culture? Like, how are you hiring for that mindset? Like, are there key things you're looking for? What are the elements of an individual that you try to find, and how do you identify them?
So like hiring is so difficult, right? Like you've spent so much time trying to decide who you're going to work with and when to do a call and like when to actually start an interview process. And then you start to interview people that aren't the right fit. So like you're always taking, the summary is like, you're always taking a small risk, right? No matter what, you're always taking a risk on somebody. And you don't need to, if they're not 5+ years experience in their domain expertise, you don't need to assume that they have everything that you're going to need. You just need to see that they have the capabilities to learn quickly. They can make mistakes here and there. They learn from those mistakes and they can work, like they can evolve.
Those are things everyone's going to say they can do, right? Like, so how do you judge that, right? Everyone's going to say, oh yeah, I've learned from here. Here's an example from my past of where I learned and improved. What do you do to judge the honesty of their statements?
I mean, ask for examples. Like you asked me earlier about like, what do I look for in a team? And I think curiosity is number one, and like ability to think differently and have done unique things in their career. So often I'm asking them, have you done something entrepreneurial? Have you built something from scratch? Tell me an example of which you did something differently. And, asking them questions about stepping out of just the day-to-day norm of a normal job of, checking the box, and asking them to demonstrate examples in which they've done something and created something and done, and it doesn't always have to be like a big question of mine would be, have you done something entrepreneurial? And then they'll say no. And then they'll tell me about something that they have done entrepreneurial, like that they didn't even realize was entrepreneurial. So look, there's no silver bullet here, right? I would say if you asked my previous investors, right, what is Dave really good at? I'd say he's really good at recruiting people. Like I can recruit the best of the best people and I convince them to come join my company and get on the mission. And I don't know why, like it has always been something I'm good at. I wouldn't say I'm the best at finding them, like searching LinkedIn and sourcing, LinkedIn. That's not the tactical. I'm just really good at assessing what does the company need in 3 months from now or 6 months from now? How do we find the people that are going to step into that role? And then when I do meet those people, I'm able to persuade them or convince them that they should join the company. And I've been successful doing that. Is
that essentially, you're sort of talking about this skill storytelling. Do you view yourself as a good storyteller? And if yes, what are key elements of storytelling that you think you are better than at most?
I have such a jarring example of this. So number one, I think I'm a terrible storyteller in a social environment. Even ask my best friends back in Ireland.
Really? I kind of imagine every Irish person is like great at storytelling because you sit there in the pub all day long and practice your stories on each other over a pint of Guinness or something. But
maybe the bar is just so high in Ireland that
it probably is. Americans don't socialize at all, and Irish all congregate at the pub, and so you have to be good at storytelling. But yes, probably the bar is really high, and so being an Irishman in America, maybe you're much better than most. But still, sorry, I digress.
No, you might be right. Like the truth is, I missed the punchline in a story that's about social, about making people laugh. Right, that for me is a different type of storytelling than storytelling about a vision or an idea or a product. I feel like I'm a very good persuasive person. Like if you went back to like early childhood, like even I look at my son today, right? He's 3. What do I get most excited about? When I see him be able to persuade me and other people to do things for him in different ways. And he'll use a different tone of voice and a different strategy with different people. And I can pick up on that. I'm like, he is so intelligent. Oh my God. Like he knows that if he says it this way with me, he's going to get a better result than if he says it this way with things. So I think naturally as a human being, I had great communication skills. Like, let's step all the way back for a second. Like, my first job was working, we didn't talk about my first job. My first job was working in Starbucks. My second job was working in a convenience store behind a cash register at the age of like 15, 16. And the reason that was good for me is I was speaking with people every single day that I've never met before, that are strangers. And I was able to form a relationship, know how to communicate. So I was always kind of an extrovert in a certain way. And then I just got better at honing my craft and persuading people. And I think part of recruiting people is persuasion, and part of storytelling is, the art of storytelling is being able to, I think, like, have an idea about a certain vision of the world and be able to convince people that you're going to be able to make that a reality. And at least that's an early stage, like for me, early stage tech. It's about big visions and convincing people that you're going to be able to solve those problems.
Do you think every good founder is also a good storyteller?
So founder is broad term, right? You could have a founder that's, has hard skill sets, but it might be an introvert, but not an extrovert, and they might not be a good storyteller. So I don't think every founder has to be a good storyteller, but I do think that one person on the founding team should be an excellent storyteller. That could be the CEO, that could be the technology officer. That would be a bit strange, but it could be chief operations, head of product. I don't know. Like, there has to be a good storyteller on the team for sure.
Yep. Totally agree. I think it's a critical component, one that is often overlooked. And I hear a lot of pitches from folks, and on a regular basis, many times those pitches just aren't very good. They might be a really technically impressive founder, but they don't really know how to tell the story. And I try to give them that advice. I'm like, look, this sounds cool, but you haven't sold me on why I should be passionately believing this, and to the point where I want to hand over hard-earned cash to invest in it. You got to tell me, I want to invest in a story. That's almost why I'm putting the money in. I want to believe in this crazy new future that you're going to make a reality. And you're sort of like giving me like, oh, it might work, it might not, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, I can't believe that.
So Adam, I have an example of this, which I was like shocked by. So I was a part of Soma Capital's fellowship program. If you don't know Soma Capital, go check them out. They're awesome. They invest in the earliest stages, the first check into startup companies where they back early founders. And so as part of this fellowship program, I had got to know the team at my previous company. I'd launched this new company 18 months ago. They were like, Dave, we saw you launch a new company. We wanted you to join. We'll give you $100,000 and we'll give you whatever valuation you want at your next investment round. So super fair terms. And they just said, like, come in, join this cohort. There's 20 founders and we're going to build together for 6 weeks, I think. And you have to get some fireside chats with some, unicorn founders. You get some like resources, materials. Can't speak more highly for that team and that foundership program. It's amazing. At the end, you do what Y Combinator would do, which is like a pitch day, demo day. And I couldn't get over how bad the pitches were, because I got to know the teams and I got to know what they were building. And I was so impressed by the technical capabilities, the products they were solving, the things that they had done, because I'd worked with them, built it with them, and got to know them. On the day of the pitch, I would say 80% undersold themselves, because they didn't know how to pitch. They didn't know how to tell stories, and they didn't know how to explain their business in simple terms where it would get people excited. I felt like that was a strength of mine from early days, and I just took that for granted and thought everyone was good at that. And it was obvious that they weren't, because some of them way more impressive companies than mine, yet my pitch was much better in my opinion.
Why didn't Soma Capital provide that training? Like, that's something YC does really well, is they give you lots of sort of pitch practice and training to be really good. And every YC company has an outsized amount of ambition and confidence, annoyingly so, frankly. But like, to their credit too, they are all incredibly confident that they are going to change the world. And if you want to be on board, you can, or if not, screw you, we're moving on, because someone else would be excited to be part of what they're building.
Yeah, there was a first piece of feedback. I hadn't seen the pitches until the day of the demo. And everyone, I think the hard part is they were recorded pitches. They weren't live. So when you're recording a pitch yourself, it's a little different, right? A lot of people don't realize how much energy you need to put behind a recorded pitch. When you do it in a room, naturally the energy comes out. Whereas if you do it on a recording, you're naturally going to under energy. Like, you need to go 20 to 25% more energy when you record yourself than you even think, because it's just, that's,
you got to like force. So I literally just did one of these on Friday last week. We're not fundraising, but like for potential customers. And I'm sitting there on this call, like just like I am right now, but trying to smile, all energetic. This is why you should be so excited about what we're doing, how we're doing it, what we're getting done. And you gotta overemphasize those things, but like bring the energy so people can feel it and hopefully join you in that energy and excitement. People are looking for
Right.
that.
And you've got to use body language, right? Hands, like you need to engage the audience. And I think that was the missed opportunity because they didn't have the time and energy to sit down with the group of founders and watch their pitches that were recorded ahead of time and be able to really give them critique in advance to be able to allow them to record the pitches again. If I had to say, I'd say they probably realized afterwards that that was something they need to implement more of. At least that was the feedback I provided to them. But again, like just stepping back, like the whole program was amazing. So many companies got funded. So many companies got new investors and had exposure and new customers and new clients. I raised 1.1 million, almost immediately after that. And during that process. So, going all the way back to the first questions of how we got into this, like storytelling is super important. So is the ability to sell. Like I came from a sales background. I think almost every founder or every company should have a person that can sell at the day one. You could build the best product in the world. If you don't have somebody to bring in the customers, to get people to care, then you're going to have a big problem over time. So sales is actually a universal thing that a skillful salesperson you can use that skill across every aspect of the business, from recruiting, from raising capital, from getting new prospects to customers, from convincing the internal team that the product is wrong and you need to actually build this piece of the product. Like sales is persuasion, and persuasion is helpful in every part of the fabric of every part of business.
100% true. Completely agree. It's also shocking me how many pitches and founders I talk to who haven't worked on, don't have that sales skill. It's like there's so many resources out there to learn how to sell and what you need to do to sell and be good at it. And yet most founders will overlook that because they're like, oh, I'm technical, I'm building the product, all these things. I'm like, no, it doesn't matter. It's sort of the kind of analogy of like if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, does it make noise? It's like if your startup is amazing and your product's the best in the world, but no one buys it because they have no idea it exists, does it matter? No, of course not. It doesn't matter. And this is where founders seem unwilling in many cases to put in that time and effort to learn how to be good at that. And to your point of like obsess over it. So it's something they should get better at.
Let me give you one maybe pushback, which is great sales comes from repetition. You have to do the reps. Like if you
that's great. That's everything, right? For product, engineering, you name it, any of these things, right. If you're going to be good at it, you need to be in it. And same thing with becoming obsessed. You have to read every article, listen to every podcast on a topic many times over before you truly get good at it and can speak convincingly on a topic.
Right. And so as a salesperson or as a founder, if you haven't done sales, like it's hard to know how good or bad you are at it. And more often than not, and I train sales teams, at Indeed, I basically joined and hired a whole team of 10 people and then hired another 50 people. And so what I've realized is with sales, how do you know that somebody's hasn't done sales before? The number one thing is they get a no and they let it negatively affect them, and it like takes all the wind out of their sails. The truth is, every salesperson that's done sales knows that you're getting 9 no's and then 1 yes. And so you have to get that level of grit and determination and the ability to take no and stand up again. If you haven't done sales before, you're not going to get used to that. It takes a long time to get used to. Number 2, if you haven't done the reps and you haven't done the pitches, you haven't done the outbound dials or done the demos, it's very hard to just turn that on. Like I find like it comes naturally because I've done it so many times that I don't even realize. Like I have a designer on my team right now who I'm bringing to sales calls. And I'm like, look, you can do design, but you're in a startup. I need you to do sales. And he's like, Dave, I don't even know how you start. There's no structure to your calls. You just dive in and you just continue having these conversations and evolve the conversation evolves. There's no structure. And I'm like, yeah, shit, I should probably be a better sales trainer. I haven't really explained to you, like, here's how you approach these conversations and what's important to begin with. So like my point to all of that is like, sales matters massively. You can't learn it until you do it. Get used to getting no's and, don't let it affect you. You're going to get 10 no's before you get it.
The only way I would say, as someone who does lots of sales myself, and you got to sell your own company, that's how you fundraising the sales is selling your company and your vision. When I sell Chore and what we're doing to our customers and they say no, I get angry a little bit at them, mostly at myself because I clearly didn't do a good enough job explaining this to them. And then I'm a little sad for their sake that they're going to miss out on how great my product is. Now, of course, I'm very biased, but they should be using us. In this is where we failed then to communicate the value prop. And so it's okay. it's an opportunity for me to learn and get better and come back at it next time. I mean, you guys should be customers of ours too, but that's a different discussion for another time. But like everyone should be. So on that note, I want to think through your day to day. How do you focus your time? What do you focus on? How do you break up your day? And what does that look like in your mind for great entrepreneurs?
Yeah, you know what? Like, I'm definitely not the best person to ask about this. Like, my day to day is hectic. It's intense. I don't time block. I actually bought Sahil Bloom's book yesterday because I picked it up at a bookstore on a Sunday and it said you should time block more. I was like, oh yeah, you know what, I should. And then it said you should spend 30 minutes a day on your email and just get through it all in one go. I don't do that at all. I respond to emails within 10 seconds. And it's not probably the right thing to do, but I pride myself on my responsiveness. And so I have a very disruptive pattern where I will multitask across 3 or 4 tasks at once. I don't time block. I often prioritize the thing that will drive revenue the most in that moment in time. Meaning if I wake up in the morning and I see 20 emails, I scan them and I say, which one's going to get revenue? Okay, get that one first. And so I have a very non-structured way in which I work, and it's very fluid and I would say very intense.
That doesn't scale though, right? So how do you delegate things? How do you manage handing things off at some point? Because obviously you can't be responsive to everyone in 10 seconds for everything all the time.
Yeah, well, it's good about a team of 5 people right now. So it's possible today, but it won't be possible tomorrow. So the things that I learned from previous companies, I didn't invest enough in operations, administration, finance, and like systems and I didn't invest enough at all in that. This time around, my 4th hire was an executive assistant. And I said, let me invest in this and make sure that we have systems in place so that processes and there's a formula to doing things. And I think that's what I've learned is the ability to build structured systems that scale. So like the stuff that I work on, if I find myself doing meaningless tasks or low impact tasks, I am so frustrated at myself. And so I will immediately create a Loom video, record myself doing the task and send it to the team. And then I'll tag somebody and tell them that's your job. And
how do they handle that?
That's
they probably have a million things in their plate. So do people get nervous and bothered by that? Or like, oh, wow, I'm flattered that David would ping me and think David could trust me with this task.
At an earlier stage in my career, I find it difficult to delegate. Right, effectively.
I think a lot of early founders in that boat.
Yeah, because I want to own everything and I want to do everything. And I think if I just do it, I'll do it faster. So I might as well just do it. The key to great leadership and great management is being able to communicate effectively, give instruction the right way, and set expectations of what other people need to be doing. And so I've got very good at, here's your job, here's why I'm asking you to do this task, and here's in order of priority where it comes with every other task that you have. And in this moment in time with a team of 5 people, it's easy to see people's capacity and know their volume of work. I also have I would say a pretty good memory where I know what's on other people's plates as much as I know what's on my plate in any moment in time. And I think that's a strength, is I will know the capacity of my team even more so than I know my own capacity. I also just hired another executive assistant, started last week, because I realized that my current executive assistant was at capacity and she didn't want to communicate that with me. I just picked up on it and I was like, wait a second, we need somebody immediately to help you because I'm providing a lot of more work to you and you're doing more work than you should be. So let's go find somebody else. So, that's how it grows over time.
Yeah, no, totally. And what's in the ability to delegate is one of those magical unlocks. I mean, we used to talk about it, but I don't know if it's on our website anymore. But the idea that basically once you, in our case, hire us as your company to outsource your operations, but in general, this is an opportunity where a founder moves from being the founder to a CEO. The ability to delegate is when you unlock that skill set. It's sort of like an unlock token in like a video game. It's like, you just got the delegation unlock. Congratulations. You're now moving to the next level, which is the ability to hand things off. A story that I'll just never forget. We had a potential customer came to us because their team, a senior leader on their team came to us and said, hey, we need help. The CEO is doing all the operations. Things are getting messed up. They're missing a ton of things. We need help. So we set up a call, had a call with the CEO. The CEO literally told me, he's like, look, I'm the founder. I can work 100 hours a week. I don't need your guys' help on this stuff. I said, okay, if that's how you feel, I would say I'm not going to change your mind. Cool. the funny thing is I was really interested in their product. And so I was like, this sounds great. Like, please send me more information. I want to learn more. Guess how long it took him to follow up with a potential sales customer, being me and my company, for their product? 2 weeks. It took him
10 days.
Two weeks to follow up with more information on a potential sale, which to me is like a completely highlighting how he does not have enough. If he doesn't have enough time to follow with potential prospect on a potential sale, he clearly does not have enough time to run their operations and do these other pieces. Like, clearly he's dropping balls, and he can't work 100-hour days and get it all done. And that company's going to fail. Like, my view is like, that company's going to fail. That CEO, they might have failed. I might have been followed up in a while. Like, you can't do it all.
Missed revenue opportunities is unforgivable. Like, I cannot forgive myself for missing a revenue opportunity. Like, at an early company and in these less than 100 people, the only thing that really matters is bread on the table, and that, your customers are happy and want to continue to pay you. So, delegation is important. You touched on it briefly. I think I'll give you my 2 cents on it. Like, I feel like you need to be able to relinquish control as you start to grow a business. You're in charge. It's your baby. You built everything. You found this, you built that, you grew this to a certain size and segments. And then there becomes a moment, an inflection point, that you actually need to go and hire people to take over certain responsibilities and departments and teams. And it's very hard and difficult to do because you don't want to do it and you want to just continue to own it. So what do? Well, you need to go and find trusted people that have experience that you can delegate to and just trust that they're going to do their job, and that you don't need to, look over their shoulder. And, I'm talking about strategy, right? What's actually that look like on a day-to-day? Like, how do you actually accomplish that, right? It's so difficult to do. Like, you need to be able to, one, be okay with people making mistakes. Like, if you're going to hand off something and think everything's going to be perfect exactly the way you did it before, then you're already setting yourself up for failure. Like, assume that there's going to be some level of mistakes. Just assume that the person that's making that mistake is not going to make it again, or they're going to make a mistake and then make it better than it was in the first place. So hiring great people, that, surrounding yourself with great people over time becomes the superpower of going from founder to CEO to scaled CEO to like team of 100 people. Like, my last team, we got up to, I don't know, over 80 people, I would say. And I ended up building 2 mid-level managers. I had like a senior leadership team, a mid-level management team. And I turned around one day, have built a whole company remotely across the whole world. And we went to like a team offsite, and I was like, holy shit, there's so many people here. Because when you're doing this remotely, you don't even realize how many people you're directly and indirectly in control of until you see them in real life. So anyway, I think handing off reins and control is hard to do as a founder, but necessary, and often done way too late. So what I'm trying to practice, even though I'm super intense and try work hard, is the ability to empower people around you to take over and take responsibility and bring pride to that work that they have achieved and done on a weekly basis and a monthly basis, and reward them handsomely for doing so.
Yeah. I hope everyone listening understands this point. It's so critical, and it's a skill that every founder needs to learn. If you have any hope of building this billion-dollar company that's going to change the world, this is a skill set you need to get good at. You just have to. You cannot do it all. The best entrepreneurs in the world most definitely don't do it all. They just focus on the biggest problem in front of them now and hand off everything else to other people who can run it, and they trust them to get it done. On that note, you actually literally were highlighting a topic I wanted to dig into for just a minute or two. How did your founder mentality or hat or CEO hat change as the company scaled? So the greatest founders in the world are the ones who build these big companies. They start off with 1 or 2 people on the team, goes to 5, goes to 10, goes to 100, goes to 1,000. How did the hats you wore change, and what did you do to make sure you could grow as CEO throughout that?
Yeah. So a couple of things. I would say I haven't got to the stage that I want to get to, right? I want to be managing a team of 500 to 1,000 people, right? And not because I want 500 to 1,000 bodies. I actually think the team will be smaller, but be much greater. My point is that like I got to 100, like that's cool. Like I want to go much bigger than that. And then the second point is like, how did I learn? I'm what you would call like, I'd say like self-aware enough to know what I'm good at and maybe some of the gaps. The best thing I ever did was hire an executive assistant. And let me give you, not executive assistant, I actually had an executive coach. So I realized that I had all this capital, all this fundraising. I'd done all this great work and I kind of built a company, and I turned around and I said, I don't have the skills. I don't have the experience. Like, how the fuck am I going to do this? Like, I don't know. So the only person that was in my corner when you grow a business is your partner, right? So I'd rely on my wife. I'd be like, this is what happened at work today. Product did this, engineering did that, customer success did this. They're all asking me for stuff. There's fires everywhere. There's all these problems. And I realize everyone's out for themselves. They're always giving you a slight edge on what's most important for them. And as an executive, I was managing a team of 10 people, direct reports, maybe 8 people, direct reports, who were then managing a team of 15 or 20. The best thing I ever did was hire an executive coach. Like, I didn't have the experience to run the team. And I realized that I'd be doing myself a disservice and my investors and my team a disservice if I didn't invest in my own executive competence and had somebody in my corner to be able to guide and be able to offer a perspective on things. And best thing I ever did. Anyone listening out there that hasn't done and hasn't hired an executive coach, I would strongly recommend doing so, because number one, it was somebody in my corner. I didn't have to judge what were they offering me advice on. They weren't offering me advice on their business unit with like a tainted view and a slightly biased in their opinion. They were in it for me. They wanted what's best for me. So number one, you feel much more secure in those conversations because you realize that like everything you're sharing with an executive coach, he just wants or she just wants the best for you. And that's really powerful when you think about it. And then number two, they give you perspective on things. They give you a different opinion. You give them information and tell them why you made decisions and you know what information you had before you made certain decisions. And let me tell you, like, early companies, you start to grow, things go wrong all the time. So most of the time you're telling them about the mistakes you made, and they're telling you like, oh, okay, well, that wasn't probably a mistake. You made the right decision with the knowledge that you had, and now we need to go rectify it, and you need to go act quickly to solve the downstream issues that was caused because of that decision. So with executive coaches, they're amazing. Highly recommend. So that was just like one major thing that I did in my career. I also hired a group of 4 people when I first began. They were all 10 years older than me. So I was 26. They were all 36. My first founding team, every single hire I made was 10 years older than me.
Yeah, I would imagine. So the last sort of 2 questions that I want to focus on. What really drives you? We didn't really talk about it at this beginning, right? You're like, okay, you're in Ireland, the one crazy person who says, I'm going to go start a company. What is the underlying drive that's pushing you to do that? Was it, you know, competition, something to prove, ego, money? What was your drive? What, if you had to sort of, speaking of your coach, I'm sure you talk about this with your coach, like what is that thing that pushes David Walsh every single day to get up and push and gets me into reality that hasn't existed before?
Such a great question. I feel like I probably should think about this more frequently and more often. You know, you're asking me on the call and doing this interview, and I'm like, I haven't thought about that for a while. I just get up every day and do it. But if I had to answer, you know, honestly, number one, I'm a huge capitalist, right? I care about money, and to a fault, right? Where
the best salespeople and many of the best founders do. I totally get that.
Right. Where I think that money is amazing. And then I think it's like the best thing ever. And it's to a fault, right? I actually realized like money is not the goal, right? That was the early stages of my career. And more recently, I've started to realize actually what really drives me. I want to build shit. I like creating stuff from scratch. I like building brands. I like building product. I like solving problems. And ultimately, all of that comes back to like, I love creating stuff.
Well, and maybe I'll just add to that. I mean, I feel the same way. The beautiful thing about the capitalist society that we live in today is you have the opportunity to create something. There's a high chance you and every entrepreneur will fail. However, if you create something that is truly beautiful and wonderful and delightful for your customers, you will generate outsized value for them and for all of your customers and for your entire team. So you will get that money in the end, right? So there's a lot of people who are vilifying Jeff Bezos and things like that. Right. And I read an article literally today about how people are stealing from Whole Foods because screw Jeff Bezos. Well, you know what? Like no one forced you to use Amazon. No one forced you to do all these things. He created things that did not exist that created massive amounts of outsized value for society because of the work he did. And yes, it rewarded him massively. But he had a very high chance of failure and took all this risk on to go do it. And so the same thing for you and every founder. When you build something beautiful, that people want, you will make a lot of money and you deserve it. But your customers will be there right with you and happy to join you on that journey.
Man, wise words. I should put that on my desk, to be honest. While you're talking right now, I just got an email. I haven't been distracted, but I just got an email with a new customer that just signed up, and it is last day of the quarter. We've got an hour before the end of the day, and I just hit my sales number. So yeah, I'm driven by revenue targets, and I'm the only salesperson in my company.
My last question I'd like to ask, and I'll let you get back to closing the quarter and crushing it. And you need to be sending me an email so we can see if we are a good customer for you guys, because this is something I've wanted to do for forever. But we'll be a Q2 customer for you. What is the single piece of advice that you would give to every single founder for, let's call it entrepreneurial excellence, right? The name of this podcast. What is it? If you had to give a single piece of advice to entrepreneurs, what would it be?
Can we talk about like aspiring entrepreneurs or current entrepreneurs?
Why don't you give me the answer for both if they're different?
Okay, so aspiring entrepreneurs, it's get fucking started. The only thing that matters is getting going, getting started, right? Like the time to start was yesterday. So just do it. Don't doubt yourself. Don't come up with a big idea. Don't wait. Just get going. Get started immediately. So that's aspiring. Current founders, don't think you have product market fit until you really do. Don't think you're the bee's knees, that you've got everything set up to scale and grow until you actually know for a fact that your revenue is subscription revenue that people are going to continue to renew and are going to be super happy with your product long term. Too often you grow too quickly or try to grow too quickly and throw bodies on problems. And that is a huge, huge red flag. So don't put yourself in that position in which you have to go fire a load of staff.
So I almost have to ask on a quick follow-up. So what is your real definition of product market fit? Because it can feel like you have product market fit, but you might be further away than you think.
I gave it the textbook example, or I could just tell you how I think about it. Like, number one, customers have to like your product and continue to pay you and increase the amount that they're paying you because you're solving more and more problems for them. So I used to think of it very transactionally. Can we get people onto the product? Will they sign contracts? Will they start using it? Now I think it way more long term and long tail. Are they going to renew? Are they happy? Will they continue to spend more money? Are they using the product more frequently and more often? Are we touching more people at the company that are getting more value? Or is it just one stakeholder? So it's so intricate depending on the product and the go-to-market strategy and the touch points that you have with your customer. I would just define it by like, do customers want to pay you? Do they want to pay you more? And are you solving really hard problems for them? And are you increasingly keeping them happy without the need for you to be in the room with them to make them happy?
So on that perfect end note, how can people get in touch with you, David, if they want to learn more about your entrepreneurial journey or about Limelight and become customers who will be absolutely delighted every single day?
Go to my LinkedIn, David Walsh, Limelight. I post content 5 days a week. I am super noisy on LinkedIn. You're going to see content every single day, stories being told about the ups, the downs, the journey along the way. Go to limelighthq.com. Check out our website. We got some amazing case studies from massive companies on the website. We also have our pricing there. Get in touch with me. Send me a DM. You're going to get a response in 30 seconds.
Amazing. David, thank you so much for your time today. It is, as you know, as the founder, we just went through all these different things here. Where, how, and who you spend your time with are some of the most important decisions you can make as a founder. So I appreciate you spending some of it with me and our audience. And look forward to hopefully doing more together in the future.
That proposal's coming to your inbox right away.
I look forward to it. Thanks so much, David.
Thanks for having me.